Now this week sees the 10th anniversary of the start of the operation in Afghanistan against the Taliban. Yvonne Ridley, journalist, European President of the International Muslim Women's Union. Of course, need I remind you, what a story, in X Factor terms, what a journey your life has been, captured by the Taliban while on assignment in Afghanistan. When that war began. Good morning, Yvonne Ridley.
Good morning.
Oliver Kamm is leader writer of The Times. He says despite the cost, the military campaign has been necessary. Oliver Kamm, hello.
Good morning.
There's a survey by ActionAid. Women, 9 out of 10 Afghan women fear for their status if there's a return of a Taliban government. Your reaction to that, Yvonne Ridley?
Well, the Afghan women were let down the moment that America and Britain cut a deal with the Northern Alliance, a group which has done nothing to promote Afghan women. Some would argue were just as bad or on a par with the Taliban. The Afghan women have been used by the West as an excuse to go into Afghanistan. You know, we were told that this war in November 2001 was to liberate the Afghan women.
There have been improvements, though. Women being educated, women going to work. There are women MPs. You know, there have been things
yes,
which would have been inconceivable under the Taliban.
You mentioned women MPs. I had the privilege of talking to Malala Joya, the youngest female MP in Afghanistan, who was being hounded out of her job the moment she stood up in the parliament.
Her microphone was switched off, wasn't it?
Yes,
yeah.
Her microphone was switched off as soon as she tried to criticise the Karzai government for corruption. And you talk about education. I went to Afghanistan with the BBC in February 2002, just after the war. The university was opening and more girls than boys had passed the entrance exam. Now, if girls weren't educated under the Taliban, how did that happen? This myth about education...
And acid being thrown in girls' faces, is that a myth as well? I don't think so. Oliver Kamm, do you want to come in?
Yes, I would like to. Thank you, Nikki. It is extraordinary that in her rather prolix remarks, Ms. Ridley hasn't mentioned at any time the reason that coalition forces went into Afghanistan, which is that it's slightly over 10 years since the attacks of 9/11. We know that those attacks were plotted from Afghanistan, and we know that some of the hijackers, not the ones who flew the planes, but the ones who pacified the passengers, were recruited by Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. There was a direct connection between intervention in Afghanistan and the security of civilians in the West. Our side has taken many wrong turnings in Afghanistan, but it's done two things. It's kept the Taliban out, and it's killed Osama bin Laden with forces who flew from Afghanistan. That's a tremendous achievement.
How do you make life better
interest.
for women in Afghanistan? Yvonne Ridley makes the point that some people in the Karzai government aren't much better in their attitudes to women than the Taliban, she maintains.
There are many, as I said, there are many wrong turnings that NATO has done in Afghanistan. One of them has been to fail to tackle the issue of corruption and in the Karzai government and institute something resembling constitutional administration. But the notion that conditions in Afghanistan are no better as they are than they were under the Taliban, which, as you rightly say, suppressed women, threw acid in their faces, put homosexuals under walls that they then toppled onto them. The notion that conditions in Afghanistan are not better is patently absurd.
Well, while I wouldn't dispute what Oliver said initially, in November 2001, Sherry Booth and Laura Bush held a press conference saying that the whole point of going into Afghanistan was to liberate Afghan women. Now, I don't go in embedded when I go to Afghanistan. I go into areas that few Western journalists dare venture, and I can tell you that the lot of Afghan women has not improved.
One iota?
Well, it would be churlish to say not at all. I mean, there are
It would be wrong to say not at all.
No, there are a few tiny green shoots in the capital. The security for women beyond the capital.
And do you acknowledge were the Taliban to return, those green shoots would go? It would be a step back into the Middle Ages for women. Do you acknowledge, yes or no?
Well, the Taliban are going to return. They're opening an office in Qatar, a political office with the blessing of the US. So you have to ask, what is this all about? 10 years of hell for the women, and it's women who suffer in war. They're the widows, they're the ones who lose the security. This war has done nothing for the liberation of Afghan women.
Oliver
They've
Kamm.
been horribly betrayed.
Last word.
Isn't it extraordinary? Ms. Ridley still hasn't referred to Al-Qaeda, to bin Laden, to the reason that NATO intervened in Afghanistan in the first place. We've done many things wrong.
I didn't disagree with you.
You've made absolutely no reference to the attacks of 9/11, Ms. Ridley. I don't know what conspiracy theories you subscribe to these days, but Western security has been... Well, you denied that bin Laden had been killed when President Obama said so. I don't know what conspiracy theories you subscribe to, but our side has taken its own security seriously and in the meantime liberated Afghanistan from a medieval, theocratic, barbaric force.
When were you last in Afghanistan,
achievement.
Oliver? When were you last in, and when did you go there? And did you travel around outside of the secure zones?
Madam, the Times' correspondents in Afghanistan travel much more widely than you, and I rely on, for my information, on the things that they have found. And conditions in Afghanistan are tremendously improved from the medieval barbarism that used to hold sway over that country.
Oliver Kamm, Yvonne Ridley, thank you very much indeed.